How much can I take out of my assets? Welcome back to our series on retirement income. Today, you're going to learn a good rule of thumb for how much money you can take out of your retirement assets and have a pretty good chance of not running out. Also, a special consideration to look out for. Stay tuned all the way to the end to see how you stack up to what the average retiree has saved for retirement. So, question here is when it comes to how much you can take out, a big consideration that you've got to understand is volatility, right? Because if you think about all the volatility that happened from 2000, 01, and 02, right? So that was the dot-com bubble, 2008 with the financial crisis. From 2000 to 2002, the broad indices, S&P 500, stuff like that, lost more than 50%. From 2007, October 2007 to March of 2009, the S&P lost over 50% again. So twice in one decade, we had drops in the market of over 50%. So those are huge, huge, guys. And when we had another big drop in 2020, it was short-lived, much shorter lived than the other ones. But that has to have you asking the question, how much is too much, right? The 4% rule, if you've heard of that, 4% rule has been kind of refuted here as of late because of all of the volatility. The 4% rule came out in 1995. William Bengen actually won a Nobel Prize for it. He said that you should have about a 96% chance of having enough money left over if you only take out 4% of your assets every single year and then index that for inflation. And so a lot of articles now have been written to where that 4% is now closer to 3%. You could get a higher percentage payout, and we'll let you know how at the end of our next video. So make sure to subscribe and turn on that notification bell so you don't miss it. And a little bit on a more consistent basis, even that higher than 4% rule. There's a lot of things you got to figure out when it takes when you're thinking about how much you should take out there. If you're retiring, you want to also look at see if you've got a lot of company stock. Is there a possibility to do an NUA, a net unrealized depreciation? And that's going to deal with capital gains taxes versus ordinary income tax. A lot of times when people roll over a 401k, they roll the entire amount into an IRA, and that money has never been taxed, so you're going to pay tax on all of that. Well, when you do an NUA, you can actually look at the basis of that company stock. And what'll happen is you'll actually be able to take that basis. You'll have to pay tax on that the moment you roll it over, but then that won't be taxed again unless you put it into a brokerage account. Then it'll only be taxed on the growth. But then all of the gain you'll pay long-term capital gains tax on that portion of it. So if you have a small enough basis and a large enough gain inside there, you can get preferential tax treatment because normally, if let's say you're in the 22% or 24% tax bracket, well, that's going to be a higher tax than what you're going to pay on long-term capital gains. Long-term capital gains, you could actually pay nothing if you're in the 0, 10, or 12% tax brackets. If you're in the 22% tax bracket, you'll have to pay 15% on long-term capital gains tax. If you're in the highest tax bracket, then you'll pay 20%. Highest tax bracket currently is 37%, and you'll only have to pay 20% on long-term capital gains. So you can see how the long-term capital gains tax ability to be taxed on that money could be preferential. And once again, it's always going to be on an individual basis because sometimes we found out that it works. Sometimes we found out it does not work, right? And I do have another video actually that goes deeper into that situation, right? So you can find the link to that video in the description titled "Got Company Stock in Your 401k?" So check out that video if you do have stock in your company's 401k. So how much you could take. Also, you want to figure out how much do you need to take, right? And that can be done with a good written income plan with a financial advisor that you're working with. How much do you have coming in from Social Security, any kind of pensions, your wife or husband, spouse, significant other, if they're going to have any money coming from those different sources, when they're going to be able to tap in to those different sources. And a good income plan can tell you how much money you're going to need from your actual retirement savings every single year. And then you can figure out if you want to meet those with market-based assets, with more guaranteed type of an assets, you can figure that out. Right. And so that's one of the big keys here. So there's a lot to take into consideration when you're trying to figure out how much you should actually take. And so now we'll talk about some of the average savings for retirees. We'll kind of go by decades here, and you can figure out, are you above or are you below? And if you're Below, it may not necessarily be bad. You just may need to understand you might have to up the amount that you're contributing every single month, but also understand how compound interest works. At the closer you get to, the retirement ages, the more time you have for that compounding to have had its effect. And so if it starts off a little off in the beginning, remember, if you're in your 20s, you probably have another 40 years before you're going to retire. So let that compound interest do its work by contributing religiously. Just set it up on autopilot and forget about it. So in your 20s, you should have about 16,000 bucks. That's about it. You're starting out, you're probably paying off student loan debt at the same time. So numbers are going to be kind of small in your 20s. They say that you should have, by the time you reach age 30, you should have your annual salary saved up. So if you make $55,000 a year, boom, you should have $55,000 saved up by the time you hit 30. Unfortunately, we're seeing in the 30s, the average saver has only about $45,000 saved up. By the time they reach age 35, it should be about 2 times their salary. By the time they reach 40, it should be 4 times, or I'm sorry, 3 times, 3 times the salary at the age 40. And most 40-year-olds, though, or within that decade, only have about 43,000. Oh, I'm sorry, 63,000. So they have $63,000 in their 40s when they should have about 3 to 4 times their annual salary. By the time you reach age 45, that's when it should be that 4 times the annual salary. Then we reach age 50, and the average is $117,000 when you actually should have about 6 times your annual salary. So over $300,000 by the time that you're in your 50s. And then when you reach age 60, you should have 8 times your annual salary. By the time you reach 67, you should have 10 times your annual salary saved up. So once again, going back to $55,000, you should have $550,000 saved up for retirement by the time you reach age 67, whereas the average person in 60s has $172,000 saved up for retirement. So far cry from the what is recommended is what the average American has. Now, also remember this: how much you need is going to be relevant to what your situation is. If you have high Social Security amounts and high pension amounts, you might not need as much saved up than someone who has low Social Security and low pension amounts. So a larger percentage of your income is going to have to come from savings if you have low Social Security and low pension amounts or no pension amounts, and a smaller percentage might need to come from it if you have a large pension or large Social Security amounts. So once again, it's going to be different for everyone. All right. So that's pretty much it. So on how much can you take out of your assets, guys? Yeah, it is going to be an individual decision. So the short answer is it depends. The long answer was this video. And so sit down with a financial advisor, someone who specializes in retirement, get a written retirement income plan in place so you can figure out how much you'll need to take out of your assets at those different life milestones, right? And so next week we'll be going over how to make pension decisions with the different options that you might have, because that works into an income plan. If you want answers to all your retirement questions, our contact information, our calendar link are in the description. And so once again, don't forget to smash that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you're notified every single week when we put out new content, guys. We also have another YouTube channel that I've mentioned. It's our podcast called Retirement Rescue Radio, where we dive deeper into a lot of these topics, long format. And so we're always trying to help people so we can empower them to live the retirement that they deserve. So thanks again, guys, and tune in next week when we go over those best pension options. Take care.